Hey guys, this is the part 2 of Whisky. If you feel you're missing something during the video or you don't understand this, please check out the part 1 of Whisky. The link is in the description. Today we will be learning about the classification on basis of distillation and cask used. And by doing so, we will be learning about so many new whiskies. First, I want to share with you about how the technology changed the way of distillation. Now earlier, like way earlier during your BC AD era, the distillation was done by simply pot still. It was simple pot shaped with long neck and it was directly heated from the bottom. And all alcoholic rich vapor with lots of impurities would come to the collector. But this all changed as we got to know about the impurities, about how flavor can be enhanced and whatnot. First on the list is steam recoil heating. Major improvement in efficiency was the use of steam by indirect heating. Now the coffee stills were heated by steam, but the pot still were mostly direct fired up to the mid 20th century. It was until 1887 Glenmorangie was the first Scottish distillery to use steam heating. There are still Scottish distilleries using direct fired stills like Glenfiddich, Glenfarclas and Macallan. Now, high temperatures can lead to burning and excess formation of furfural or sulfurous and vegetal notes, especially if there is lots of sediments like dead yeast or grains in the wash. To prevent this burning, direct heated wash chills have been installed with rumagers, that is rotating chains to keep the solid moving at the bottom of the still. Next comes boil bulbs or boil balls. Now before in time, the still heads were adjusted in many ways. There were soap trays and stirrers to minimize frothing, steam coats to enable more even distillation. A common way to increase reflux was to shape the still so that the rising vapors were cooled or exposed to lower pressure and copper. This was easily done by adding bulbs or ball in the still head. They basically increase copper contact, reflux and ester formation while decreasing the heavy oil and sulfury notes. Now let's start with the distillation. There is Scottish pot still whiskey, Irish pot still whiskey and coffee still whiskey. Now let's learn about the difference. The biggest difference and the most important one is that the Scotch is distilled twice, whereas the Irish whiskies are distilled 3 times. Distilling the whiskey 3 times provide a much smoother texture to whiskey, and that's why Irish whiskies are very smooth. In this picture, you will be able to see the boil bulb between the len arm and the base of the still. It's kind of like a ball structure attached. To more about the technology change and get in full technical details of Scottish pot still, I've posted a link in the description. You can check that later. Now whiskies are also made in column still, where to be honest, the spirit might lose its original flavor of grains. Now why is this still done? It's done for blending. While making a grain whiskey used for blending, you want the spirit to be neutral so that when it's blended with the other spirit, it doesn't have contradicting flavors but should, dissolve in the flavor and texture of the primarily whiskey. Now we will be learning about the whiskies by the casks. Now bourbon rye is American, Scotch is Scottish and blended mature is any blend with whiskey. First comes American whiskies, your bourbon rye, Tennessee whiskey and all. So here you can understand all types of American whiskies. All that matter actually is the composition of the wash, meaning the grains used in what quantity. Now all these whiskies that we learned have to be distilled not more than 80% ABV. This is done to retain the original flavor. Addition of any flavoring or coloring is prohibited. They get these colors from the new charred oak barrels, and US regulations don't provide a minimum time limit for aging like Scottish and Irish. Charred oak barrels are oak barrels that are heated by direct fire so that the inside of the barrel releases the wood sugar and caramelizes it. Bourbon is primarily distilled from 51% corn. It is strongly associated with Kentucky but is not only made in that state particularly. The spirit gains its colors from caramelized sugars and vanilla flavor that is released by charred wood when the distilled spirit is poured in this for aging. The bourbon whiskey distillation has a very new concept that is doubler of a thumper. Most bourbons go for a second distillation. Now focus in distillation for bourbon is for to be continuous and stripping, which is easy to get from column still. But we do not need a pure neutral spirit. We need the color and flavor we get from pot still, and hence comes the doubler. This enables a continuous chill to be attached with a pot still. Now in a doubler, the vapor comes from column still and condensed to the liquid and goes in pot still where it goes for the second distillation. The impurities are very well removed after the column still, and all is left is the flavor which we will get at last in the bourbons. Now another kind of American whiskey is the straight whiskey. It's like any other American whiskey, just it has to be aged at the ABV concentration for at least 2 years. This ABV concentration should not be exceeding 62.5%. Tennessee whiskey is same as bourbon. It's actually very identical, although many of these Tennessee whiskey undergoes a filtering stage called Lincoln County process. In this, whiskey is filtered through a thick layer of sugar maple charcoal before aging. This filters the whiskey on one hand and on the other provides the color and flavor of maple sugar. Now comes the difference between American Scotch and blended mature. The American asks for charred new oak barrels, while the Scottish don't specify regarding the barrels, but generally oak barrels are used. No time limit set for American, although American whiskies are aged for 4 years because for every batch providing a new charred oak barrel and then using it for a year or so is a huge loss. The Scottish has set a time of minimum of 3 years. Now blended whiskies, aging is not specified. Why? It is because the blended whiskies are a mix of single malt and single grain which have been already matured beforehand, and hence there is no need, but one can mature it after blending. Part 3 regarding the Scotland regions and Ireland regions of whiskey will be coming shortly. I've put some links in the description for people who want to get into the depth, so go and check them out. Thank you for watching. Do like, share and subscribe.